Hey there. Ready for a deep dive?
Always.
This time we're taking a look at the Romanian Constitution, specifically the 2003 version. Basically the playbook for how the entire country works, and we've got excerpts. It's going to be fascinating.
It really is. This constitution is so interesting, It shows Romania's journey, especially after the 1989 revolution.
Right, like a nation reinventing itself.
Exactly.
Okay, so Article 1 gets right to it, saying Romania is a national, sovereign, independent, unitary, and indivisible state. Wow, that's a lot of big words. What's the meaning behind them all?
Well, think of it like this. After decades under communist rule and Soviet influence, this is Romania drawing a line.
Like we're calling the shots now.
Yeah, it's a powerful declaration of self-determination.
We're back in the driver's seat.
You got it.
And then it says Romania is a state of law, democratic, and social.
And don't miss the values it highlights. Human dignity, citizen rights and freedoms, free development of human personality, justice, and political pluralism.
The cornerstones of a democratic society, right?
Yeah, the very foundation.
Okay, so it's a roadmap to a free and fair Romania. But how do all these big ideas actually work on the ground? What difference does the Constitution make in people's lives?
Well, let's look at Article 2, about sovereignty. It states that national sovereignty belongs to the Romanian people.
Power to the people.
I knew it. They exercise this power through elected representatives and referendums.
Of course, but a country needs some structure too, right? It can't be a complete free-for-all.
Right, and that's where Article 3 comes in. It defines Romania's territory as inalienable, meaning it can't be taken away. Borders are established by organic law, respecting international norms, of course, and it lays out the administrative divisions. Communes, cities, and counties. Some cities even have a special status as municipalities.
Okay, so we've got the foundation, the sovereignty, the territory. But what about the people living there? What does the Constitution say about their rights and freedoms?
That's where things get really interesting. It guarantees a wide range of rights and freedoms, not just for citizens, but for foreigners and stateless persons living in Romania, too.
Wow, inclusive. So not just vague promises.
No, these are clearly defined rights, like the right to life and physical integrity, freedom of movement.
Wait, hold on. Inviolability of domicile. I haven't heard that one before.
Okay, so picture a Romanian citizen enjoying the peace and quiet of their home. Under this right, the police can't just barge in without a warrant.
Ah, makes sense. So your home is your sanctuary.
Exactly, protected from random intrusions.
Okay, privacy. Got it. What other rights are specifically protected like that?
While freedom of expression and information is a big one, you have the right to speak your mind, access information freely, and even publish your own material. Then there's the right to education, a healthy environment, private property, all spelled out in detail.
Wow, they really wanted to make these rights crystal clear. Okay, but shifting gears a bit. Who's actually in charge? What does the Constitution say about how the government is set up?
Well, it's not just one person calling all the shots. The Romanian Constitution outlines a system with 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial.
So no dictatorships here. Checks and balances, right?
That's the idea. No single branch gets too powerful.
Tell me more about this parliament.
Well, Article 61 calls it the supreme representative body and the sole legislative authority. It's made up of 2 chambers, the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate, and the members. They are elected through a universal, equal, direct, secret, and free vote.
So Parliament makes the laws. But who actually puts those laws into action?
The government, led by the Prime Minister. According to Article 102, they handle both domestic and foreign policy, but always based on a plan approved by Parliament. They're the ones who get things done.
I'm noticing a pattern here. Representation, checks and balances, rule of law. Like they're really trying to build in safeguards at every level. Now, what about the president? Where do they fit in?
The President of Romania has a very unique position. Article 80 describes them as the representative of the state.
So the face of the nation.
In a way, yes. They guarantee national independence and ensure the unity and territorial integrity of the country.
Okay, so more of a symbolic role then. Mostly ceremonial stuff.
Not entirely. They also act as a mediator between the branches of government and between the state and society.
Interesting. More than just ribbon cuttings then.
They even have the power to dissolve Parliament under certain conditions, and they can call for nationwide referendums.
Wow, that's some real power. But with all these branches of government, it seems like things could get complicated. How does the Constitution make sure no one oversteps their boundaries?
That's where the checks and balances come in. The Romanian Constitution is designed to prevent any one branch from having too much power.
So everyone keeps an eye on each other.
Exactly. The president can dissolve parliament under certain conditions, while parliament can initiate a vote of no confidence in the government, basically forcing them to step down.
It's a delicate dance. What about the judicial system? They must have a lot of power when it comes to interpreting the law and ensuring fairness.
Absolutely. They play a vital role in upholding the rule of law. Article 124 says that justice must be administered impartially and equally for all.
Everyone is equal under the law. I get it.
And judges are independent. They answer only to the law itself. That's how you guarantee fairness and prevent corruption.
Makes sense. Okay, so independent judges, equal treatment. It's all starting to come together. But one thing I'm still curious about.
Go on.
It's Romania's history. We talked about the 1989 revolution and the move towards democracy, but how is that actually reflected in the Constitution? There's got to be a bigger story here.
You're right, there is. It leads us to two really significant articles, Articles 148 and 149.
Okay, cool. What do they say?
They specifically address Romania's integration into the European Union and NATO.
Ah, so aligning with Western institutions after decades of communist influence.
More than that, it's a huge shift in Romania's post-communist identity. It shows a commitment to democratic values, human rights, and international cooperation, all vital for the country's development.
So it's a way of saying we're leaving the past behind and embracing a new future.
Yes, exactly. It's powerful.
I'm starting to see this Constitution in a whole new light. It's not just a bunch of legal jargon. It's a reflection of a nation's hopes and dreams.
Constitutions are living documents shaped by history, reflecting a society's values.
We've covered a lot here, from sovereignty and territorial integrity to fundamental rights and the government structure. I feel like I'm finally starting to grasp the Romanian Constitution.
We've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore.
We could spend hours on this.
We could delve into the details of checks and balances, the role of the Constitutional Court, or even how these rights are interpreted in modern Romanian society.
You're right. But we have to save something for the next deep dive. Before we move on, what stood out to you the most from these excerpts?
For me, it's the strong emphasis on individual rights and freedoms, especially given Romania's past experiences with oppression and censorship. It's like they learned from their history and built a better future based on liberty and the rule of law.
I totally agree. It's like they're saying, never again.
Exactly.
Okay, everyone, that wraps up part 1 of our deep dive into the Romanian Constitution. We'll be back soon to dig even deeper into this fascinating document. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Hope you're ready for more on the Romanian Constitution.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Last time we set the stage like Romania's core values and how their government is structured. Now I'm ready for the nitty-gritty. How do these different branches actually work together? What keeps things running smoothly?
Okay, let's start with Parliament, the heart of lawmaking. We know they create laws, but what does that look like in practice?
And just to refresh my memory, it's split into 2 chambers, right?
Right, the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate. Article 75 lays out how they work together to pass laws.
Ah, so there's an actual system.
Precisely. Some laws, like those about elections, national defense, or the judicial system, start in the Chamber of Deputies. Others begin in the Senate.
Okay, so it's not just random chaos.
Not at all. After a bill is adopted by one chamber, it goes to the second for final decision.
But what if they disagree? I can sense some drama brewing.
Well, the Constitution has a solution. If the second chamber disagrees with something under the first chamber's authority, the bill goes back to the first chamber for a final decision.
So it's like a back and forth until they agree.
Yeah.
But that seems like it could take forever.
Right. But to keep things moving, there are time limits. The first chamber has 45 days to decide, or 60 for complex legislation.
And if they miss the deadline?
The bill is automatically adopted.
Wow. So they got to stay on top of things. No procrastination in Romanian lawmaking. Okay, imagine a bill makes it through all that and gets to the president. What's next?
Well, then the president gets involved. They have 20 days to promulgate the law.
Which basically means signing it into effect.
Exactly. But, and this is interesting, the president can also send it back to Parliament for another look.
Like a try again button.
Sort of. It's a check on the legislative branch. Make sure laws are carefully considered.
So another layer of scrutiny. The president has their say, then maybe the Constitutional Court too. Speaking of which, what exactly do they do?
They're the ultimate protectors of the Constitution. Article 142 calls them the guarantor of the supremacy of the Constitution. They're like the referee, making sure everyone plays by the rules.
So they decide what's constitutional and what's not. Big responsibility.
It is. And they have a lot of power, outlined in Article 146. They can rule on the constitutionality of laws, treaties, even parliament's regulations, and they resolve conflicts between government authorities.
They sound busy. So what happens if they find a law unconstitutional?
That's where Article 147 comes in. If they declare a law unconstitutional, it's like hitting undo. The law is no longer valid. Parliament or the government then have 45 days to fix it if they don't.
It's gone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
It all goes back to upholding the rule of law, making sure the government stays within the boundaries of the Constitution.
I'm starting to see the whole picture. It's like a complex machine, all these interconnected parts, each with its role, working together to keep the system going.
Right. Like any well-maintained machine, the Romanian constitution relies on these checks and balances to prevent anyone from abusing power.
Okay, that makes sense. We've talked a lot about institutions and legal processes, but let's bring it back to the people. How does the Romanian constitution actually protect individual rights in practice? How do these principles play out in real life?
It's not just about having rights written down on paper. The Romanian constitution also has ways to make sure those rights are upheld in everyday life. For example, Article 51 gives citizens the right to petition the government.
So they can directly voice their concerns, demand action.
Yeah, and the authorities have to respond to those petitions within certain timeframes. It's about making sure people have a voice and holding the government accountable.
That's a big deal, especially for a country that's experienced authoritarian rule in the past.
Exactly. It shows how important citizen participation and transparency are to them.
This constitution isn't just some theoretical document. It actually has teeth. It provides ways to protect rights and prevent abuses of power.
That's right. And don't forget the independence of the judiciary. It means judges can make decisions based on the law without any political pressure.
Yeah, that's super important. Independent judges are essential for a fair legal system. But what if someone feels like their rights have been violated by the government? What can they do? What recourse do they have?
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Romanian Constitution. Ready to continue?
Absolutely. We've gone through so much, the structure of the government, the checks and balances, all those intricate details. But I'm curious about how it all actually works in the real world. What kind of impact does the Romanian Constitution have on the daily lives of its people?
It's a really important question. Remember all those rights and freedoms we talked about? Well, they're not just abstract concepts. They actually affect how people live, work, and interact with their government.
Can you give me an example, something concrete that shows the connection?
Sure, let's take freedom of expression. Article 30 guarantees the right to express your thoughts and opinions freely without censorship.
So Romanians can openly criticize their government, protest, have real conversations about important issues.
Exactly.
That's a huge change from the communist era when dissent was basically silenced.
Absolutely. And it's a cornerstone of any democracy. It allows for diverse viewpoints and helps keep those in power accountable.
Makes sense. What about other freedoms like the right to assemble freely? How does that play out in real life?
Article 40 guarantees that right. Romanians can form political parties, join trade unions, create other organizations to advocate for their interests.
So it's not just about individual rights, but collective action too. People coming together to make their voices heard and make change.
Yes, and it's essential for a strong civil society, which is vital for a healthy democracy.
Okay, so it's more than just individual rights. What about the right to freely associate, including religion?
Exactly. Article 29 guarantees freedom of conscience and religious belief.
So people can practice their faith without interference from the state.
That's right. Romania has a variety of religions, and the Constitution protects that diversity. It ensures separation of church and state while safeguarding individual religious freedom.
It sounds like all these rights create a more open and inclusive society, one that values individual freedom and diversity.
You got it. And these rights aren't just theoretical, they have real-world implications, like Article 32, which guarantees the right to education.
So everyone in Romania has access to schooling.
That's the idea. State education is free, and the Constitution even emphasizes supporting disadvantaged children and youth through scholarships.
So it's about leveling the playing field, giving everyone a chance to learn and succeed.
It's about equal opportunities, investing in the nation's future. And it's important to remember the Romanian Constitution doesn't just cover political and social rights. It also addresses social and economic rights, things like the right to work, social protection, and a decent standard of living.
So it's not just about political freedom, but economic security and well-being for all citizens too.
Exactly. Article 47 highlights the state's obligation to promote economic development and social protection, ensuring a decent standard of living for everyone. This includes pensions, paid maternity leave, healthcare in state facilities, unemployment benefits, and other forms of social insurance.
It seems like the Romanian constitution is trying to create a society that's not just free, but also fair and just, one that looks after its people.
You're right. It envisions a Romania where individual rights are paramount, the rule of law is upheld, and the government works to ensure the well-being of all its citizens.
That makes sense. But we also talked about how rights can be restricted in certain situations. How does that work in practice? What are some examples?
Remember, any restrictions on rights have to be justified and proportionate to the situation.
Right.
For instance, during a public health emergency, like the COVID-19 pandemic,
Right.
governments might need to temporarily limit freedom of movement or assembly to stop the spread of a contagious disease.
Yeah, a lot of countries had to do things like lockdowns and travel restrictions.
Exactly. Those measures were put in place to protect public health. But even in those extraordinary circumstances, they were reviewed by the Constitutional Court to make sure they didn't go too far or unnecessarily infringe on fundamental rights.
So even during a crisis, there are still checks and balances to prevent abuses of power and protect individual liberties.
Always. The Romanian constitution makes sure that any limits on rights are temporary, absolutely necessary, and subject to judicial review.
I'm really starting to see how the Romanian constitution shapes daily life in Romania. It's a complex document, but in the end, it's about building a society that values freedom, justice, and the well-being of its people.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than just a bunch of laws. It reflects a nation's values, history, and hopes for the future. It's a guide for creating a society built on democracy, human rights, and the rule of law.
Exploring this document has been amazing. I feel like I have a much better understanding of Romania and their commitment to a better future for their citizens.
It's been fascinating diving into a constitution that truly aims to empower its people and build a just and equitable society.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Romanian constitution. We've covered a lot, but as we've learned, there's always more to discover. I hope this deep dive has made you curious and given you a new appreciation for the power of constitutions. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop learning.